All right, let me get a picture here. I gotta show my mom this. Gathered here today for the union between your great idea and the technology that you're going to use to bring that idea about. So here's my LinkedIn. I also do YouTube. So if anyone's a developer in here and wants to work on their career or has had a hard time finding a job, stuff like that, I do YouTube videos about stuff like that. So check that out. I'll let you take a picture if you want. All right, move forward. So you can grab the slide deck on this bit.ly link. It's up on GitHub. You've heard of that? You got to publish everything you do, right? You got to show the world you're an important person. I'm actually really humbled that Tony let me come speak. I don't feel like I'm anyone, but I'm struggling, just like you guys, to make a name for myself in the world. And some of you already have, from what I've heard. But I really like teaching other people and helping them to grow. So hopefully you can grow a little bit tonight. I'm going to call out Josh. I think you should teach one of these coming up, Josh. So I know Josh back there. I'm going to do my pitch for a company I just joined. This isn't my full-time gig, but it's a part-time thing. I work at a company called ZenLeap. So we're actually simplifying hiring. So one of our goals is to try to take a little bit of the money that recruiters keep taking away from us and use that to actually keep people around, right? Recruiters take a 20% cut typically of whatever hiring you're going to do. And so this bit.ly link here will let you know that I actually referred you over. So my boss will think I'm a cool guy. And you get a free 14-day trial. I think we have about 300 or 400 in our pool here in Dallas. So go try it out. It's up and coming. Give us some feedback on it too, because we're iterating right now. So check that out. So I went to Wikipedia, the source of all knowledge. What is an MVP? Who's heard of lean startup before? Guessing most people have, right? So that's where I think I first heard about MVP. And what I learned in that book was MVP is getting the smallest usable product into your customer's hands as soon as possible, because you're probably going to need to pivot and do something else sooner, right? So it's kind of the agile mindset. I think after this, agile started to grow a lot as well. I don't remember exactly when this book came out. Any buffs out there? Yeah, I know Agile was, but Agile's been exploding more and more lately, right? So Agile came out in about 2001, something like that. Snowbird, right? With that meeting with all the smart developers and stuff. So where I'm going to take you tonight. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you should consider when you're creating your applications. And I'd love other feedback here. I know Josh has some knowledge on this, so I'd love to know some other things that we should consider when we're starting to make our application. So if you have any expertise and have created a startup mobile application or created a mobile application, that'd be awesome. We're going to talk about some of the landscape. So what are some of the technologies out there today? And we're going to go over a few pros and cons. And that's a little bit interesting. We'll go over some demos too. So what should we consider when we're making our MVP for our mobile application? One thing is speed, so time to market, right? If we can't get to market quickly, our idea might die, right? I remember watching this YouTube video a long time ago, and they talked about startups, and said one of the key, there's 5 different main components he talked about. And one of the key ones was timing was the most important thing, right? Who's heard of the Apple, I think it was the Apple Newton, if I'm not mistaken? Heard of that before? It was like the iPad that never was, right? I think that it came around in the early 90s, just died like a tank, and then got resurrected 15 years later. So And something to consider is actually your timing, but getting to market quickly when you think it's the right timing is important as well. Your development costs. So how much is it going to cost you to develop your application? How many developers will it take you? How much expertise do they need to have? Can you do this yourself? Are you a developer? And is this MVP disposable? So are you going to be throwing this thing away and rewriting it, or are you going to keep building on top of it? Typically, we all say we're going to throw it away, but how often has that happened to you before? How many people have heard that before and it hasn't happened? Right? We're going to throw this away. We're going to create new stuff when we get money. Yeah, whatever. Lies. All right, some other consideration. We have to think about security, right? It depends on what field we're in. That might limit what we can do. What platforms we can use. We might have to have more control. We're going to think about, we have to think about some of the UI components, right? I don't know about you, but I'm super judgmental about horrible looking UIs, right? When I look at something, it doesn't matter how good it is. If it doesn't look good, I'm just going to be like, well, this is probably garbage, right? Even though it could be the best application in the world. Talk about scalability. I don't know a lot about scalability, but it's something you want to think about. It's something you want to research on. And how is your app going to scale as you get more and more users? And platform maturity. Are you using a platform that's been around for a while? Is it going to stick around? Has it been proven? Is it getting a little long in the tooth, right? Is it something that you should be not considering? Those are some of the considerations we should have. Does anyone else think of any considerations? I'd like some feedback. I like to have some fun tonight, and I'm not up here to do a monologue. So anyone else have other considerations you might want to think about when you're building your application?
Sort of the e-commerce piece, the members part of the website and the e-commerce, sign up now.
Yeah. So if you're going to do e-commerce, how are you going to do that portion of your site? Great one.
No, just saying it's easy use, simple UI.
So simple UI. So you have to think about your usability, right? So you're going to want to get that out to people as soon as you can and iterate on your UI so it looks good. Yeah.
You got some of it there, but I'd also say architecture, because you can build things different ways. And with the right architecture, you can grow it. The wrong architecture, you can still meet these.
Right. It kind of goes into scalability a little bit and other things as well, right? Clean code, stuff like that.
Resources. So I've got a client right now. They built an application 2 years ago, and the framework they used is kind of out of date. Not only is it out of date, but there's not a lot of developers here that can work on it. So when they find somebody that can, they're paying double the price because those people are in high demand because there's not very many of them.
Yeah.
So if you pick a language that developers don't enjoy, good luck getting the developer.
Yeah. So don't make your app in COBOL, people. All right. Love it. Anyone else?
Third-party dependencies and support structure on the platform maturity. Sometimes it's you don't get best of the both worlds.
Yeah.
In case of Xamarin on Microsoft side and Flutter on Google side, Flutter has some toolings, but still bleeding edge. The ecosystem around it is not as profound that you get with Xamarin, but the Xamarin tooling, if you're working with forms, has serious challenges. But the API is great. It's evolving literally every minor release of Studio. So, and then third-party controls which are not coming, which will come handy for you to deliver some of the user experience controls that you want to design, which are not part of the out-of-the-box platform.
Right. So kind of like the UI components that are available there that aren't. Yeah. So third-party ones and stuff like that. That's awesome. Cool. Anyone else?
How are you going to work with beta users?
How are you going to work with beta users?
So if you've got a mobile application, we'll keep in the scope, but if you've got a mobile application, typically you're going to want to test that, right? You're not going to build it and then throw it out on the iOS App Store for everybody to download without having somebody use it first. So how are you going to get it into the hands of those beta users and get feedback from them without going to market prematurely and getting a lot of negative feedback? Because your App Store rankings are you have to game the hell out of those, right? once they go bad, it's hard to get them back because now you got to convince people to download an application that's got a bad rating.
Right. I think another thing too is marketing, right? You can't throw apps up on the App Store anymore and just get people to download them. Good luck. I tried. Right. It's changed. Maybe 5 years ago you could do that. Not anymore, right? Everyone wants a piece of this action. That's why everyone's out here tonight, right? So everyone wants to make a mobile app. Awesome. Thanks for that feedback. So I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not an expert in any of these platforms. All right. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I'm going to do my best to give you the information that I've learned from going over all these things. And I think part of the thing is too, it's really hard from the research I've done. I'll give you a story. So I was in college a couple years ago, and I was trying to pick a mobile. The whole reason for this talk is because I researched a lot about different technologies you could use, right? So the technology I ended up using was NativeScript. I was looking at all different ones, and we'll talk about some of them tonight. And I found it really hard to know which one was best. I was trying to figure out, okay, which one's best for this particular use case and which one's best for this use case. I guarantee you no one has tried exactly what you're trying to build in every platform and has made a video on YouTube on it. I can guarantee you that. Unless you're trying to do a to-do app. Maybe someone's done that for you. But so you really need to go do your own research, right? So it's really important to go and prototype and go try to figure out what are the hard parts of this application. What do you think is going to have a hard time scaling? And go build those in one or two of these and go, okay, if I think this is right, let me try this hard thing and see if it's there. Because you don't want to get 2 years down and then have to rebuild this thing. And that might happen anyway, right? Software has risks. So this is just a starting point. So if you thought I was an expert, I'm sorry, but I think we're going to have fun tonight and I think we're going to learn a lot together. So let's talk about like the three main types of applications. You guys might think of more, and this gets a little fuzzy in how you can define the different types of applications out there. But the one is native solutions, right? And you have, technically I'd say the only real native solutions are Java and Objective-C or Kotlin and Swift, right? Going across Android and iOS. I haven't built any Xamarin applications, doing a little bit of research, and from what I saw, your iOS apps are basically native, but your Android ones aren't quite. But I've heard that the performance is basically there. Can anyone say that has anyone seen that the performance is basically there? That's done the research on that?
It's fairly complicated.
Okay.
I think when you get things under the belt on tuning, it is native. Once it runs, it is native. It's no more hybrid at that point. It's not anything like Cordova or something.
Right. And stuff is getting, like, our phones are so stinking fast now with this octa-core nonsense. It's like, you're probably not going to know this difference anyway, right? We're not building games here. So, and they build games in C# anyway with Unity on these phones. So it's like, yeah, it's probably a wash, if anything. We have the hybrid solutions, right? So they can use native components, but they might be using some of their technology with those native components. So we'll go over a few different ones. They allow you to reuse the code. So you don't have to build in both Java or Objective-C. And then we have the web view solutions. These ones are the slowest. So what's a web view? Yeah, so it's just a website wrapped inside of this container that says it's an application, right? So like you mentioned, Cordova, PhoneGap, it lets you do that. And those are typically the slowest. And I don't know if they still provide the best user interactions. But we'll talk about a few different things. So some of the coded solutions we'll talk about tonight is ReactNative, NativeScript, Flutter, and Ionic. Okay, who's heard of ReactNative? All right, how about NativeScript? Oh, dead. You've heard of NativeScript? Did I talk to you about it, or did you hear about it before? Okay.
I listened to an interview with somebody on the podcast.
Okay, yeah. It's really cool. I wish NativeScript was more popular because I think it's a cooler technology, but I'm just a fanboy, so ignore me. Flutter. Sort of Flutter.
Is that a Google one?
Yeah, so Google, so what I've read on one blog, and I don't know if I have it linked in here, but they're saying that Google is, if you're familiar with GitHub stars, who's heard of GitHub stars, right? So GitHub is where you can go and store your code. So Flutter is stored on GitHub, and by the amount of stars, you can see how popular something is, right? So you can see who the cool kid on the block is. So Flutter, I think, has more than any of these. I think it has like 60,000 stars. So Google is using its unqualified strength to just like overrun everyone else because it hasn't been around nearly as long. ReactNative and NativeScript have been around for 2 years longer, and they're not nearly as popular. Ionic, who's heard of Ionic? Interesting, cool. So we'll talk about some visual code solutions. So these aren't no code, but they're using visual code. So you don't need to know very much. So who doesn't know how to code in here at all? You can raise your hand, I won't judge you. All right. So those of you who don't know how to code, this is what we'll be going over as far as demonstrations. I might show a few other things, but the reasons these are cool is because you can prototype really quickly, right? So this is a way you can prototype even if you're going to build in some other applications and get something thrown together quickly. All right, so let's talk about the pros and cons of Objective-C and Swift or Java and Kotlin, right? These are the best performance you can get, right? You can't get better performance. Even if you decide to go with like C# or something like that, you're gonna have to learn. If you're using forms, you just have to learn some of this anyway, right? Nope. If you're not using forms, then you do. Yeah. Yep. So.
You don't need to learn APIs. You don't need to learn Objective-C or.
Right, but learning the APIs is kind of like learning it anyway, right? So that's kind of the hard part of a lot of things. It's not the syntax; it's the APIs you have to learn. You can build on top of your MVP, right? So you can start. We talked about architecture. So if you're not going to throw something away, if you build it in these applications, you're building them right. You probably need a larger dev team. Who's built Android or Objective-C or iOS applications with Objective-C or Java before in here? How many people on the team did you have? Just you? Two?
We had a lot, but it was a big application.
Okay. And were you guys' commercial applications as well? Okay. It's on the App Store? Cool. So depending on what you have, my guess is you'd probably, if you wanted to spin up a app quickly, you probably might need up to 4 senior devs to do each one, unless you have some unicorn devs that can code in both. But I don't know how many people have met devs that can do iOS and Objective-C coding. Yeah.
They weren't experts in either.
Right, and that's a problem, right? Because then you have slower app time. So you might want to get 1 or 2 experts in either one. And how much is it going to cost you for each one of those devs? Probably $150K each. If they have any good experience, something like that. So that's some stuff to consider. You don't get code reuse across platforms, right? Anyone think of any other pros or cons? This is not. Remember, I said this is a starting point of things you have to think about. Anyone thinks of any other pros that you have?
The release management is very hassle based on what the new APIs comes.
What's that?
You have to anticipate for release management dependency as each platform is changing.
Right.
And that does affect the platform.
Yeah.
And that reminded me, so one thing that you deal with here that you don't deal with as much if you go with a hybrid or the web views, the big advantage of the web views is you can do a release without having to force people to download your product. So when you go with an Objective-C or a native app, you make your changes, you push it to the App Store, they push it out. You're not going to get all your users to download it immediately. So if you have a bug in your app that's giving people 50% off on a certain product, you can't force them to download the latest version. If you have an application that's either hybrid or using web views, I think the latest versions of Ionic allow for you to do hot swapping. So you can deploy code on your server, so that next time somebody logs in, it pulls down new code without them having to go download the app through the App Store. A lot of people don't upload, or don't update their applications automatically. So you kind of have, you can kind of enforce updates, right? You can
Yeah.
say, hey, you can't use this until you update. There's other ways around it, but that is a bigger problem.
Awesome. Thanks for that. All right, so Xamarin. We already talked about a lot of this. You're gonna have a smaller talent pool for Xamarin. I haven't seen a lot of Xamarin jobs out there. And even if you have .NET developers, they're still gonna have to learn the Xamarin platform. Although you could probably speak about this too. Are there a lot of Xamarin devs out there?
I haven't ever worked on a project that used Xamarin. I've come in on a project that had Xamarin before we got there, and they were switching. But I would imagine a .NET developer wouldn't take much training to get up to speed. Yeah.
But then they have to go learn the APIs, right? So.
It's like, when I started with Xamarin, a little over 18 months, and I've been away from hardcore development for a while, since I was in the leadership team. The challenge we had with Xamarin is not so much about learning the language or the APIs, which you need, no matter which tool stack you use. I'm using Xamarin for my stuff, particularly for Xamarin Forms. Right? In my perspective, I'm working on a B2B offering and working on native application development to waste of time. That's my straight architecture thinking. It's just truly waste of time because most of the business solutions you can bring with same look and feel and same user interface. You have very rare moments where you need user experience that has to pick up the native hardware abstraction layers. And Xamarin Forms gives you all those APIs underneath, right on the hood. The major challenge with Xamarin Forms is if you want to, your iterations, design time iterations, as you're changing the pages, right? Seeing those pages right away is impact, that can be costly. So you end up buying third-party tools because the entire thing is open source, though Microsoft funds it. So those are the challenges.
So you don't get like hot reloading where you can instantly give feedback?
Flutter is awesome on that part.
Right.
But if there are options like Xamarin, you can buy those things. Reload things.
So your iteration cycle is longer when you're developing your UIs.
The cycle could be longer.
Right. Awesome. Cool. I know someone mentioned stability, but I think any of these you're going to have stability issues
One of
with.
the things I'll share with the community here is, one of the reasons Xamarin has not been popular because people have been against Microsoft. That's not the way you should look at the maturity is completely different. There is a great white paper on Medium. I will send you the link. We can post it to the group here. That compares Ionic, Flutter, and Xamarin, which gives you inside details.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So let's talk about NativeScript. This is one I've actually done development with, right? So it's cool because you can use Angular, Vue, TypeScript, and Vanilla.js. So you can go create applications if you just know JavaScript, right? You don't have to know TypeScript necessarily, but you can use TypeScript. If you have Angular skills, you can use those. If you have Vue skills, you can use those. So that's pretty awesome. You also have 100% access to all the APIs underneath with JavaScript. So I haven't done research on this, but last time I was researching, ReactNative didn't have that. It only had a limited subset of APIs. So that's a cool thing, is you can actually use JavaScript. You don't have to go into Swift or Objective-C or Java or whatever. You can share your code with your website. So that's pretty cool. I remember one of the applications said they shared their code, like they shared 70% of their code base. So that's pretty fun. And I think that's a lot of reason why people use Ionic as well. But you're going to get way better performance with NativeScript than you will with Ionic. It's backed by Progress. So have you heard of Telerik before? So Kendo UI. So talking about UI components, the reason they built this whole thing is so you go buy their UI components, all right? I'll give you the lowdown on that. So you can go drop $1,000 per dev or whatever it costs to go get their UI components, right? So their documentation's really great. They actually wrote, I'll jump forward here a bit, but who heard that React Native lost Airbnb? So if you've heard of React Native, that's one of the big things that React Native had. Not that React Native is bad, but one of the articles they wrote is that they maybe should have used NativeScript. So go look up that article if you're interested. I thought that was a cool little jab. You'll probably have to train your devs on it. That's a possible con. This is just less popular overall, right? So this is less popular than any of the other ones. Why? I think part of the reason why is a lot of it hasn't had backing by big companies until recently. I think SAP started using it. When I was first using it a couple of years ago, no one was using it except for Progress. So there are some big companies that are using it now that have seen the light. So yeah, that's about NativeScript. So I have this slide here of getting started with NativeScript. I don't think I'll go into any of these, but it's got a cool playground on there. When you go to that playground site, it'll actually have the IDE and everything, and you can go and make your application, then hit run, and then you'll have a QR code to go and download your app to your phone immediately. So if you want to go play with this and you know how to do JavaScript, you can go check that out. There's also, I found, there's also a bunch of starter code applications, right? Remember you said, Tony, you keep saying you want this this generic application where there's some starter code on here. You can go steal from that to get started with something too. So I thought I'd throw that in there. Flutter. So Flutter has native-like performance. It's backed by Google, right? Everyone loves Google. Well, most people do, except for the privacy stuff, right? They're listening to our phones right now. You're going to see an ad later about Flutter or something. Has a huge following. I've heard it's really, really quick to develop in Flutter. The downside I'd see on this is you have to use Dart. So that's a new syntax you have to learn. So I see that as a con personally. I don't want to learn new stuff all the time, but we have to, right? If you're a developer, you have to learn new stuff. I've heard really good things about it. I haven't used it yet, but I'd go check it out. I found this GitHub. There's a bunch of example apps inside of here. And this is not the official one, but they have a bunch of different clones like Instagram and a bunch of different really cool things in there. So go check out Flutter. Let's talk about React Native. So it also has native-like performance. It's backed by Facebook, Airbnb. I don't know what. Does anyone know the other companies that used it besides Facebook?
I think Microsoft uses it. I
Really?
think for the Microsoft mobile apps. I read an article.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny. Why aren't they using Xamarin? Well, I guess it's because they're independent, right? So
It's a different stack,
it's a different stack, yeah.
completely different stack. So, I mean, two different things. Right? They also support TypeScript. Right? See, I think in today's time, if you're going anywhere outside of Xamarin and Flutter, you should start looking at WebAssembly. Right? Because the apps, so Airbnb is another provider of these guys are of Sweden. They're building apps based on WebAssemblies, where you not only are targeting your mobile client, you're targeting web client and desktop client. See, we talk about B2C, but there are always needs where you need desktop application in the B2B space.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Xamarin cuts much better than these guys. Right? You cannot run a AD, active directory centric secure application that also runs on mobile app in internet world. And when you go to the on-premise, you have a desktop app running in case the mobile app doesn't exist. So those are great advantages over there. So React Native, if like you were talking about NativeScript, where you can reuse the code in website, it's good. It sounds great in theory, but when you start building architectural patterns, you don't have much reusable codes that you want to consider in your pipeline of software development.
Well, one software startup said they shared 70% of their code. So that's pretty high reuse, I think. So I think for different use cases, you're going to have different, everyone's going to have different, how many people are here are going to build B2B stuff or enterprise level stuff? How many people in here want to do consumer level stuff? All right, so most people want to do consumer level stuff. So it all just depends. So I think you brought some great points up.
I was just saying that reuse, in my opinion, comes from the fact you get to do the components. So the components are the UI things, and you can use them both in your mobile app and on the website. So you get a lot of reuse from both the UI and the business level.
Right.
It's pretty heavily used in the AWS Amplify world for their whole part of about the whole GraphQL side of things. A lot of their tooling uses React Native for the mobile stuff, and a lot of the website stuff is just plain React. At least examples. And they support the other major ones too, like Vue and Angular and stuff. Most examples I see there are React things.
Right. So one of the downsides of React Native, and it's not necessarily the downside, but it's just different, is the paradigm shift of not having a separated view from your model and everything like that. Everything's kind of just together, right? I don't say that's bad, but it's just different. Not all developers like that, right? So if you don't like that, go and do NativeScript with Angular. Otherwise, you can go over here. The thing is though, is Angular is completely different, right, from React, right? React is just a view, so it just does what you can see, and Angular kind of controls everything. It has tooling from back to front with testing and everything else all built in. So in React, you get to decide a lot of things, and Angular kind of is very what we call opinionated, right? It decides things for you, and it has a bunch of tooling around it.
They use new version every week.
Yeah. Well, 6 months, I think. Close. I know. Yeah, it's.
Right now, you're ready to even go pilot demo. You'll be 3 versions behind.
Yeah, but here's the thing though: is React 2 to React 7? It's not that big a leap. But look, what's Java's release cycle now? What's C#'s release cycle now? It used to be 5 years, and now it's like, is it 2 years, 1 year? I don't know what it is anymore. It's way faster than it used to be, right? Everything's moving faster.
Early versions of Angular were terrible. They switched. It's like living in a whole new platform. It went from 1 to 2.
Well, yeah, but 2 now is 2. You can update everything to 6 very quickly, from what I understand. All right. So there's some more. This is cool. So in snackexpo.io, you can actually pull that up, and you'll have a visual representation of your app, and you can work on your app directly. I saw this over a year ago, and you could actually drag pre-built components in there, but I think they took it away. So go try it out, though, if you want to go code with, if you know React or you want to go play around with it. If you know any JavaScript, you can play around with stuff in there. If you don't know anything, you can change the titles of stuff, right? So just go play with it. It'll have fun. All right, Ionic. So Ionic's cool because you can just use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills, right? And I guess I kind of was thinking that of web views in general when I was thinking of Ionic. So you could just build a website, right, with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and use Cordova and go spin up your application. So that's another thing that you can do. Ionic, most people use Angular, and they just came out with Ionic 4, I think, in January, and it's allowed you to use a bunch of different technologies in there. So you can use React, just JavaScript. I think you can use TypeScript by itself maybe too, and then Vue. So it's backed. I messed up. It's not backed by Facebook. I lied. Copy paste issues. Happens to us all. All right, it can look. What's that?
It's backed by Google.
It's backed by Google? Oh, cool. It was originally just an open source project, I think, though, that just started by someone, right? So it didn't have commercial backing originally, I don't believe. So it can look native, but it doesn't feel native, right? And I might be wrong. I haven't used it as much lately, but stuff I've heard and stuff, it doesn't quite feel native. Web views just don't feel native. You're like sliding on things, it just feels weird. Anyone have a different experience with web views or?
Well, I think you kind of, a lot of that depends on how we design it, right, et cetera. Another thing I was going to say here, you brought something about desktop. Ionic 4 will compile to Electron,
Oh, cool.
which Slack is an Electron app. So if you download Slack and use it on your desktop, that is an Electron app. Any Ionic 4 application, so you write once, compile to web, mobile, and desktop.
There's for code reuse, people. There we go. Awesome. Any questions on anything we've gone over so far?
So is this more like the HTML apps or something like that, where you can do multi-use between your website, putting it in your app?
Yeah, so you can deploy this straight to your website just as it is when you use Ionic. So you can just take that code and it's like basically, I don't know how much, but it's a very high code reuse. I don't know what percentage, I'm guessing in the 90s, if I were to guess. I'm getting some head nods, yes, so.
Quick question. On the Microsoft side, it is appearing that Microsoft is also going like an app store by Apple and Google. But if you want to submit any app to the Microsoft, has it progressed like the standardized ones Apple and Google have done? Or which way it is?
Well, I think Windows Mobile died, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, but you're not talking about the App Store for Windows applications, right? I don't know a lot about how you can deploy on that, but you'd have to build something in like Electron if you wanted to reuse some of this code, and build it in Electron if you were going to wrap it together. But I don't know anything about how to go and deploy to those particular platforms.
Yeah, I find it a little amusing when I see app, download the app on the Windows side, and I couldn't find any corresponding, distribution channels like these two. So.
Oh, you couldn't find them on the other distribution channels?
I think they call that, isn't that UWP, isn't that the framework that they use to build those? I know that you can write those in JavaScript now, those Windows apps. But I don't know if there's any frameworks that build to that and other things.
Hey, Xamarin, one code, you can build UWP code right away. Just one command. So iOS app, Android app, UWP app. One code, all three platforms.
Cool.
You don't make it.
And how do you write the UWP apps without Xamarin?
Xamarin Forms. If you use Xamarin Forms,
No, without
it builds it.
I'm saying
without
without
Xamarin, Windows, there is a UWP application using C#.
Okay.
So the .NET Core is going with. I think
Yeah.
in fact UWP is open source now.
Yeah, got all the.
But you're right, still writing JavaScript.
Yeah, it's JavaScript. Yeah, that's what I thought.
All right. So if we're gone over your head and you're not a coder, I apologize. Not trying to. We'll get to some good visual stuff soon. So here's some more stuff. There's a playground with Ionic, and that's Stack Blitz. Who's used VS Code or heard of VS Code before? All right. So Stack Blitz actually takes VS Code and it puts it in a browser. Really freaking cool. So go check that out. Yeah. And I don't know if you can run the app in there. I just barely played with it, but yeah, go check it out. All right. So let's talk about like no code or / visual code, right? Bubble is one that's kind of marketed itself as this no code / visual code solution. And I've tested it out a little bit. We're going to do a demo on it. So visual coding, what is that? So if you can think, who's heard of, I can't even think right now. Who's heard of Scratch? Played with Scratch before, right? So that kids coding platform where you can drag stuff around. There's actually another one that actually looks a lot like Scratch, which is the next one I'll talk about. But Bubble lets you just have all this interface and you can just do a bunch of drop downs and you code that way, right? So it says, kind of gives you all your logic in a linear way visually. So you don't have to code anything. You can extend it using jQuery and JavaScript, which is cool. And what's really interesting about this platform as I was researching it was there are whole consultancies that all they do is build Bubble apps for you. I don't know what they charge you, but I thought that was pretty interesting that if there's consultancies built on top of it, it might be a decent enough platform to get an MVP up. So if you have no coding experience at all, I'm going to say this is your go-to one. All the research I looked at said go to Bubble. Does anyone know of any other visual code / low code solutions out there?
Kony, K-O-N-Y, and OutSystems.
K-O what?
K-O-N-Y.
K-O-N-Y is one of them. OutSystems. What did you hear about? What was your feedback on those? You're telling me that you were doing some research on them, right? Were you able to dig into them at all?
We did a platform assessment for the Army Air Force Exchange. They were going to build a mobile application for all the military service members to use to shop. We did an evaluation. The long and short of it was, cost-wise for them, it was going to make more sense to have their internal team do it, coupled with the fact that so one of the things we haven't talked about is with some of these platforms, you got extreme vendor lock-in. So if you go with OutSystems specifically, there's high vendor lock-in. You build that app, you're stuck with them, you can't move it somewhere else. Whereas if you build it, with any of these other frameworks, you can deploy it in other places. With specifically that OutSystems platform, if you built it with them, you had to pay them to host it every month. You couldn't take your code to Amazon or Azure or Data Center X. So that was the other thing that was one of the downsides. But the biggest downside was lack of granular control. So when you want to start doing something really custom, for OutSystems specifically, you could write code to do that, but testing that code and automating your pipeline was not fast. Like, to customize it, which is what a lot of more mature applications are going to do, they're going to want to have advanced feature sets. To write the customization code was much more difficult for a developer than that same developer making that change in a pure code approach.
Right.
So if they had just a standard code base, call it ReactNative or Xamarin or one of those platforms that the code was all built on that, implementing a new feature that had to be custom and not one of the standard form elements that you get from the UI here was much faster through pure code than through this visual approach. I don't know what the case is with that.
I have an inkling that that's going to be the case probably with most of these. And customization at all, you might run into issues where you can't customize it enough. And that's what I felt with Bubble. So when you do customize with Bubble, you have to build plugins. So it doesn't seem like you can take whatever plugin they have and then tweak it. So that means you're gonna have to rebuild a lot of components that exist if you want to tweak those, possibly. So, yeah.
Is Bubble like OutSystems where you have to host it on their platform?
Yeah, so you have to host it. The fees are fairly low, considering. So you're gonna get that, I'm glad you brought that up. You're gonna get that vendor lock-in, but you get, that's gonna happen with these visual coding platforms a lot of the time. Like, yeah.
So when you're developing, do you pay or after you launch your app?
So you can actually use this for free, but your app is public, right? So if you want to go use this for free, it's going to have a watermark on it, and we'll see that when we pull it up. But it's public. So if you're like, oh, my idea is like super important, I can't show the world, then you're going to have to shell some money out, which is a good, that's the freemium. That's the freemium marketing strategy, right? You're like, well, we're gonna give you everything, but we're not gonna give you exactly what you want for free. So, great question. Performance is gonna be an issue, right? They do have some themes out of the box, so those are two different theme platforms. Like you could just go kind of buy a prepackaged app for like $500. So let's say you want to get started really quickly, and you have an idea. You might be able to, Tony, for example, you might be able to go right now and go pay $500 and go, well, I don't have a lot of time, but I got a little cash burn in my pocket, right? So you go and get that started. So, it's demo time. This is when you get live demonstrations are always fun, right? See how this goes. All right, did you see that? It's Bubble.is. Did you guys get that that have your computers with you? You can try it on your phone too. See how that goes. See if they have a good mobile experience for the daring. So Bubble.is. I'll go back to the slide presentation so you can see it. So it's not .com. Don't get confused. .js, yeah. You know me, so that's called top level domain, TLD. Do you guys, I like stupid trivia. Do you guys know roughly how many TLDs exist now? I think there's about 14 plus 100. There's like about 1,500 if I'm not mistaken the last time I looked. Does anyone know the exact number? You got your Google foo? That's pretty crazy, right? There's everything out there, so don't worry. The name of your brand is out there somewhere. You can get it. Yeah.
So in your experience using something like Bubble, how complex can your platform be? How complex can you get?
I don't have any experience with this other than just messing around with the demos. But what I do have is on the resource slide in here. They talked about how they copied, I think it was like Airbnb or something like that site, or I can't remember which one it was. But there's a link you'll see on the resources at the end. Let me just show you that one. So how I clone Twitter without any code. It's the bottom one there. So go check that out. And go check out their posts and see what you can do. But like I said before, I'm not sure how complex you're going to be, but you're going to have to go build a prototype, like I said, in these solutions and see what you can build. But because there's consultancies out there that all they do is this, they build these bubble apps, I figure you can build a lot of different things on this platform. Hope that answered your question. Sorry I don't have more experience with it. All right, did everyone get that wanted it? All right, so I'm gonna type in my email. Let's put this as a fake one. Sorry, I have some sign up. All right. Hopefully it doesn't make me go to my email. Accept the terms of service. I'm not going to agree. You guys don't get the rest of this presentation. Sorry. All right, let's check it out. Now this is pretty cool. So if you guys have already pulled this up, they have this really cool starter thing. So I'm just going to kind of go through it here. It's going to teach us how to use it. So we're going to build a way to display a map. So if you can follow along with me up on the screen here if you don't have your laptop, or you can just go through the steps right now. You don't have to watch me do it, but I just want to show you, this is pretty cool. So they made this pretty dummy proof, right? So if you're like, I don't have a lot of coding experience, this is really intimidating. This is a way you can get something up and maybe get some funding and then get some other people behind you, right? If you're a solopreneur or whatever you want to call it. So let's go through it. So it takes us 5 minutes to build. Did you have a question, Tony?
I'm at a different screen. It's the welcome screen with saving data building. How'd you get to this?
I just signed in. Yeah, I signed up with it.
Okay.
There's probably, I think there's a way to get to sign out and back in again, and then on one of the first screens you see, it has all the different tutorials they have before you can create an app.
Oh, I see. Create a new app down here.
Yeah, so at the top you should see the links to all the different sections.
Yeah.
So click on that first link and it should bring you to this.
So how much of the code could be reusable from this? Or
None.
not at all? None.
No, you're not going to get any code reuse. I mean, you could. I mean, people aren't using a lot of jQuery and stuff nowadays you could if you want to do Angular JS, but I'm going to say you're going to get very little if no code reuse. So
Yeah, a little bit, right? Because this works for Android and iOS, right?
Oh, sorry. So yeah, you're going to get this on both platforms, right? And so that's one thing I didn't really talk about is with all these different hybrid solutions and everything, you're going to get both platforms. That's why I talked about it tonight was.
Even with
yeah, even with this, you're going to get both platforms because this is using WebView. Okay, so that's the benefit of using these hybrid solutions or using Xamarin is you're going to get both platforms and you're going to get some code reuse out of whatever you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to have to rewrite. I'm speaking generally. There are some other platforms. There's tons of different technologies you can use out there. This is just a small amount of them. So these are some of the more popular ones, though. Awesome. So let's start it off. So let's build an input form. So it says scroll down. And it tells me where to go. So it says go get a search box. I thought this was pretty nifty. It's pretty cool. It's got all, doesn't work like super great, but I mean, a lot of games could learn from this, right? When you're learning a new game. Like this is exactly how you should do tutorials in games. I actually did a little bit of game design for like board games and stuff before, and this is exactly how you should do tutorials for games. So it says we should change the placeholder to say type in address. And you say there's a bunch of different things we can select in here. I don't know what they all do, but I'm sure they're fun. So I think I just hit exit. So that is my pre-entered text, right? So that's the text I'm going to be displayed with. My user is going to know to type in their address. So double click and open the property editor. So I'm going to change the style to geographic places. And I've created my first one. We'll scroll back up over on the side here, go to button. I'm going to drop a button on the screen. I'm going to put in save. Hit continue. Start workflow. So this is kind of the programming, the visual coding section I'm talking about. So the first part, you can get drag and drops in a lot of different places for building UIs. But this is where you can actually go and do the visual coding stuff, right? So it's telling me I want to go to add another selection. So it says when button save is clicked, right? So that would be a conditional in code, but we're just doing it visually. So I want to do data thing, create a new thing, right? Create a new type. All you data buffs are probably cringing back there. I'm sure this is not the most efficient way to do things, but this is fast. We're building something really quick, which is really sweet, right? So I just want to mock something up over a weekend or in an hour. I can do that, right? I don't have to go and like, this is going to be faster than almost any other thing you can do. So what does ask us type? It says change the type to location. So that's where we're going to store that location, right? So if I hit enter, we're doing great so far. It's keeping me motivated. You guys feel motivated? I do. See, this is how you should build tutorials. This is awesome. Forget your long documentation no one's going to read. Just have your users do this, right? This is awesome. So we're going to store this. We're going to add another field. We're going to create a new field called address. If I can type. I'm just glad I'm not live coding right now. I'd just be fumbling all over this. This is awesome. How many of you have live coded before? Yeah. Have you ever had problems? Right. That's the name of the game. So it said, I want my address to equal the input address's value. And that's pretty cool. It looks like you can do validation and stuff in there. I'm not so sure about testability though, right? So I don't know if they have testing built into this. That's something, that's another consideration, right? We kind of brought up earlier. I think Joshua brought that up. So finally, we want to create an action. We're going to reset the inputs. We're going to continue. Go back to our design, pick a map, drop that map down. I'm going to make it a list. Make it, let's pick location. Okay, so it says I want to pick the location. Well done, it's keeping me motivated. We're going here, guys. Do a search for location, map type. I'm going to do an Apple map style. And now we're going to preview. Yes, allow once. Give me my app. So I was just trying this out, and I thought it was, I think it just crashed. Let's see what happens. Maybe I got a little too gung-ho there. So let's type in, what's the address here? It's 4800. What is it again? What's that?
Preston Park.
Preston Park. I don't know where I am half the time, right? That's what my phone's for. Who cares? Right? So hit save. Like, that's pretty cool, right? I think it's pretty cool. I code and I think that's friggin' awesome. Like, I just did that in like a couple minutes.
In front of a bunch of people.
Right. And it's like dead simple. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just mindlessly doing it. I didn't remember all the steps. I was just looking at it, right? So that's some of the stuff you can do. And there's a bunch more lessons. It won't even let me say I'm good for now. I'm using IE, that's why it's crashing. All
I
right.
have a question. So that example with the Google Maps charges. How does this work out vendor stuff? You know, like they charge per location. I'm asking because we just put it in an app. If I go to production, how do we account for?
I don't think Google Map always charges. I think it depends on your volume, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
right?
I'm just saying, like, I wonder what happens if I hit that volume.
I wonder too. I wonder if they start charging you through the nose, or you have to enter. I'm guessing you'd have to enter your own API key at some point when you hit their threshold. Because I'm sure they have their own commercial one. So maybe they're handling that for you, which is awesome because maybe that takes some of the cost out of the equation, right? I don't know. It's a great question. I'd go research on their page. I actually don't know. Well, they'll just, yeah. I imagine Bubble will throttle you at some point and say, no.
And fee is it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, Google Maps
It's really
is
expensive.
it's really expensive.
It's like 20K or something like that a year for their starting stuff.
Yeah.
That's like, just getting
Yeah.
basic what you,
Yeah.
Bing is only a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
The mapping is
Just go use Open Maps or something like that, right? There's got to be something open source that sucks, right? Just joking. What's that?
Apple was free at that time. I don't know right now. Is it still free?
Oh, I don't know. I was just bringing up that we just added, because that's a Google map, I was looking at the bottom. We just added it and built it, and we didn't have to configure an account to put it in an
Yeah, we
API.
literally had to write 2 different pieces of code
Yeah.
just to save money, right? And then points were different.
Right.
Those two maps
Oh,
were
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
It was an ugly experience for customers.
Yeah. That's another question I had for this, because this is intriguing me. I've never seen Bubble.is.
Yeah.
What about third-party support? So like, if I build an application, an e-commerce application through here, and I want to integrate first data payment processing, they're going to give me an SDK. Does this support, like, that was another drawback.
Can you interact with that SDK using jQuery?
Yeah.
That's what I'm wondering.
They will have a component for that. I mean, those platforms are pretty big.
Well, yeah, for the bigger ones, yeah. But like, for example, when we did that OutSystems evaluation, that was one of the drawbacks, is there were 2 vendors that they had already got contracts with that had SDKs that were supported in, Swift, obviously, but in other platforms, but they weren't supported in OutSystems. And the only way that they could integrate with that was to be able to write a bunch of custom code. And it was going to be like, it was going to
Yeah, and most likely once these guys get too big, they will have their own payment processing.
Yeah, you have to pay for payment processing, I believe. So they're probably locked into a specific vendor, and that's probably one of the ways they take a cut off of you as well, right?
Like white label that they want.
So I'll look at the pricing really quick. So if you do personal, it's $14 a month. If you can't afford $14 a month, then I mean, it's pretty cheap, right? So just starting out, it gets more expensive from there. But yeah, I think that's a great consideration. You're gonna have to do a lot of research and see, am I gonna be able to interact with these different platforms? But I see this as very useful for creating prototypes or MVP that's like throwaway. And I think that's probably the main thing for this is something that's throwaway. Or if you want to do consulting and spin up an app really quickly for different people that they're just using it for a business application, go become one of those consulting companies that's charging X thousands of dollars to go and just boop, 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 done, right? So
How does it come out as mobile app?
I think it just wraps it in Cordova or something like that. But I think it does it on their end.
Does it submit to the store for you, or do you have to download the code and then submit?
I think you can. I know you can get like the. If this was a platform I'm thinking of, I think it can give you like an IPA, right? And isn't that the iOS version? Yeah. So I don't know if it's signed and everything, so you can submit it. Those are some great questions I don't have great answers to. So, but you have to pay for the different types of exports you get. Like you can only do so much on the free platform. I don't know if you guys saw the watermark there in the corner too. So you're going to get watermarked and everything's going to be public. So it's going to say that on your app, right? So they can advertise. But go build a toy app. Go deploy it to the store and see if anyone, see if you can get one download. That's a win for me. Awesome. So Thunkable is another one. It does visual coding that's just like, and it's even cheaper. So you can go check that one out too. So there's a few different technologies out there, right? And there's more. Joshua mentioned some more. We mentioned Xamarin. What I really suggest that you go do is take this knowledge, go take this sheet, go look at the resources section, take this presentation that I have here, go through all the links, start doing some research, start using some of those other considerations that we talked about today, and time block your research. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in research mode, right? Go pick a platform and go build something, because otherwise you're going to get stuck. I love to get stuck in research mode, right? As you can see, that's why I built this thing today, right? I love to research different stuff. Yeah, and just go build it right now. Go make some prototypes. So here's some other technologies to check out. I don't know if I put one up here. There is one for building Ionic apps. So you might want to look like build Ionic apps visually. I don't know if I have that one up here as well. Oh yeah, it's the first one on there. But yeah, there's a bunch more technologies in there. There's a cool one on the bottom if you want to build an app from a Google Sheet. I thought that was cool. It's a free one. So there's a bunch of different technologies. There's more resources and references. I'm going to put my info at the front here if you'd like to connect with me. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was great to get your guys' feedback tonight.
Taking questions or you done?
Yeah, let's do questions. We were already kind of talking. What do you guys want to talk about? What's that?
Are you going to share the presentation?
Yeah, what about the link?
It's already on.
Yeah, go grab that.
I heard in an interview today, Google now has in their Google store what they're calling TWAs. They call it trusted web apps, but they are progressive web apps. For those of you familiar with them, you can submit it to the App Store, and Android users can download it, and it looks, it installs. It looks like an actual app. But does everybody know what a progressive web app is?
Yeah.
So it's if you build an Angular app without making it Ionic, you just make an Angular app and you use the service worker on the back end, you're building a web app that's responsive. Google now accepts that as an app. So you can submit it to their store and users can download that. And all it does is save a button on the home screen. It looks like an app, but they call it a trusted web app. Apple's not doing it yet, but I heard that Google is. I haven't played with it.
Is that the thing where you can like download it straight from the web and it just installs automatically?
They make it look like it comes from the Google Play Store,
okay.
but it's actually just downloaded straight from the web.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just.
I heard of one that you could download I heard of some technology that you could like, you'd be on Google, you hit like install straight from the Google site.
That's the progressive web app.
Okay, cool. Anyone else have any questions, comments, jokes? Start over here.
So I want to mention that Microsoft have come up with a new technology, Blazor. So I don't know if you experimented with that, like use the web assemblies. So like instead of learning like JavaScript, it's like totally like if you are like .NET stack like developer, then you just have to know like C# and all that, and then you can use completely. You don't have to learn like all this JavaScript or native or Angular or Vue or JS or whatever. You can just do the whole thing in C# and like.
You're hurting me, man. I love JavaScript. No, but that's a great point. So you don't.
WebAssembly is not just by Microsoft, it is actually joined by.
But it's like,
He's saying Blazor is Microsoft's.
Blazor is Microsoft.
like behind the seeing like Blazor is using the web assemblies, so it's just like browser like physically compile it and then like pretty fast actually.
Yeah, I heard you. Can you do a lot with that yet, though?
Yeah, I saw a demo of it last week. The developer on my team used it. Now, he didn't do a lot with it, but he was just demoing it. I mean, you can.
I heard a lot of stuff would be for like if you're trying to do. I don't know about Blazor, but WebAssembly and stuff. I've heard like you do 3D stuff in it, like stuff where you want to really optimize. But
You can take the Unity work and run in a browser, follow.
right.
So you can, and that's not just, so Microsoft WebAssembly flavor is Blazor, but even Google is funding it, the initiative, Apple is funding the initiative. So it's nothing against JavaScript, but they're taking the whole backend code to the browser.
I'm interested to see what security issues we have going forward with this stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if they have it sandboxed well enough. Oh, it's going to be fine. We've never had bugs ever.
JavaScript has a whole bunch of just security issues,
What's that?
and its entire life cycle. JavaScript, follow. And we can work on that. That's really fine. That's something new to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's something new.
One of the things that you mentioned was basically a website that just looks like an app. And in one of my particular projects that I've been working on for years and years, I would rather just do it all in HTML. And the only thing is that if I just give people a URL and say, here, go to the URL, use your Google on use your Fox Pro or whatever, use your Google on your phone, your Chrome. Just they say, they're used to running an app. So if I just put an HTML site together and I don't need anything really fancier than that.
Mm-hmm.
How do I make it so people who feel like they need an app can make them feel like they're getting an app?
So go check out PhoneGap/Cordova, and you should be able to just put a wrapper around that, and it'll probably take you like an hour to do or something.
It's called what now?
Cordova, I think PhoneGap is the open source version. I don't know. They've changed names on it.
Yeah, I think it's the opposite. Isn't it Cordova's the open?
I
Yeah.
I think Cordova's
yeah. Just look up PhoneGap or Cordova, and you'll find it. So.
Is it still alive?
Oh yeah. People still write websites. Yeah, I don't think people are using it. They're using other technologies now too. But just like, for example, if you have a website you want to go throw up, I mean, Ionic's still using the same technology to go and do deploys. So as far as I know.
I think Ionic depends on Cordova.
Yeah.
To compile.
From what I understand. Sir, over here, you had a question earlier.
Yeah, which tool set do you prefer?
As far as what?
Well, not the no code, but if you're gonna like write a more serious app.
The one I have the most experience with is NativeScript. I think it's cool technology. Now that has more buy-in with like SAP using it and stuff like that, I think it's going to start getting more traction. I think it's cool because you can use just JavaScript and go spin up an app.
Yeah, I don't think the other ones support Vanilla.js, do they?
Ionic does, but it's not going to be as fast. So I think Ionic would be another good consideration too.
It looks like you can use React for TWA also.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, React, Angular, any of those that yeah.
So I have one like for the UI, development, do you have any like third party for React Native?
What do you mean for the UI?
Writing like very complex UI, it has grids and controls.
Yeah, so if you use NativeScript, like that's going to be mixed with Kendo UI. And so is that, you're talking about components,
Yeah,
right?
like, for Angular, we can use like material design and the
Right.
type of-
So you can use Kendo UI, I think, on any platform. I think they have it for Xamarin. I think they have it for all of them. So I'd go check that out. I don't know. It's one of them I know of. Does anyone know of any other?
What's the point?
What's that? Sync Fusion?
Well, and there's also like if you're doing Angular or Ionic, they've got like there's always like a bunch of NPM libraries. There's so has anybody used Material?
Yeah,
So yeah, the Material works. Ionic comes like out of the box with it, but you can use there's a Material framework or library for any of
Yeah,
these.
there are a lot of actually, third-party providers.
Yeah.
Not from environment like sticks, there are many actually.
Right.
Of the like, so but like I was looking something which is more friendly with the like React Native. That's what.
Oh yeah.
Something which is
Yeah.
like works.
Yeah.
React has some of its own UI components built in, if you want it friendly to use.
Great question. Anyone else?
I'll throw it out there, just, we were talking about really more of the UI and front end, but you get a complicated app, a lot of times you got server back end. And I've been doing a lot of work with GraphQL, it really simplifies things, trying to get your app to talk back, so it's using REST. So if you hadn't made the jump, it's worth the time to jump in on that.
What tools do we use to do that?
I'm using the AWS tool sets because I'm a heavy AWSer. So the whole Amplify thing, where it'll generate your GraphQL server for you. You give it a high-level schema, it'll build it. If you want to do it somewhere else besides AWS, Prism is really good. It'll front end a relational database and get a GraphQL interface on it.
Does it generate your client for the front end?
It'll generate the queries, the GraphQL queries that
Yeah.
the client will use, and you just put those in the code as they run this query. It's great, because you get everything in one swoop. Instead of going having each banging things down with REST, just
Yeah.
one massive relational join, and you get it all back.
Does everybody know what GraphQL is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't used it yet, but I really want to use it. I can think like,
There are people actually give out a structure like for parent-child, relations. I would prefer to use GraphQL. That's
Yeah.
good. But relational, like, I'm not,
yeah.
so that's.
I mean, I've had a good experience with it so far. It doesn't even have to be relational. I'm sitting on top of DynamoDB and you get the same benefit. So it just gives you a nice abstraction. Same about Facebook too.
Right.
Yeah.
It's got ties with React, but you don't need to use it with React.
And you have to do, like, because part of the promise of that is that you don't have to do as much server-side code. Because, like, I have a project right now where we've got a REST API that turns in more into a transactional API. And
Yeah.
developers ungoverned have just turned it into, like, you got 1,000 endpoints, and you got to know which one to hit. And the idea behind the GraphQL is just one endpoint, and give me, here's what I want, give it back. And you can push all the business logic front end. That sounds really appealing. I just haven't used it.
I mean, that's what motivated me to make the jump over the rest.
You-
But I was like, I think if I could do it again.
Right.
Do you need to spin up a server to interact with the GraphQL?
Yeah, but there's native things you can run in Node, or there's a bunch of different places. on top
Is
of
there a lot of boilerplate code you have to spin up to get it going?
it. You can get it up real quick. There's a whole tutorial if you're interested. It's called Learn GraphQL. You can go through it.
Cool.
I just wonder, for the React Native, I don't know what they use for state management, like RxJS, they use it. I mean, I don't know what they use.
For what management?
State management.
Redux is what
Yeah,
it's
React Native.
Yeah, they use Redux.
Just stop supporting Redux now, right?
No.
So they were, they won't believe in React.
They released something that's supposed to make it unnecessary. I'm not a React developer, but I listened to this podcast called Syntax FM. If anybody is interested in React, there's 2 developers that host it. It's really good. That's where I started listening and learning about GraphQL. But there's something they just released for React that is supposed to make Redux not necessary anymore. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, you're probably talking about the hook.
Yeah, it's hooks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what that is, but I just remember them saying that this might replace Redux.
Yeah, I don't know if it replaces it, but it's definitely a different way of thinking. It's less about classes and more about event hooks. What was the name of the podcast?
Syntax FM.
Syntax.
Another question up here?
So, in deciding which technology to go with or which tool to choose and stuff like that, is it more of what your app functionality, what drives it, which, on which technology to choose? Is it more of the app functionality or the cost? Or
There's a million different things. Like a lot of times, like what do you know, right? So what technologies do you know, right? What are
if we were to not build and if we were to outsource, is it like the developer's wish or whatever it is?
a lot of times it'll be whatever company you go and you might have to pick one if you're like, I want this technology for whatever reason. But it's really, there's a lot of considerations to have. It's a hard question to answer.
And, can you shed some light on the financials aspect of it? Like, I know app development can take from $1,000 to $1 million or whatever, but hosting it in iOS and all, like how much it might cost
So if you want to go get it, let's say you have no money, right? So last time I checked, the iOS store is going to charge you $100 a year. I think Google charged a one-off fee of like $25, $35, something like that. I think it's a one-off fee. If I'm not mistaken. I haven't been charged again. I think my app's still up. So those are like the two fees you're going to have to pay if you want to get it out. And then everything else just depends. Like you could bootstrap from nothing, right? You could go learn one of these technologies, or you're going to go pay for Bubble or Thunkable or whatever you want, whatever Coney or whatever other one. So that's kind of like the bare minimum. You're going to have $125 if you want to go in both stores. And then it just, if you're talking about outsourcing and stuff, oh my goodness, like have fun. Like you need to network with people and find good people to go build your app, or you're going to have some nightmares, right? I've heard of some nightmares. So I saw a guy talk. What's his name again? I can't think right now. Chandra, have you guys heard of Chandra Dal? Yeah. So I saw him talk. He pays his developers like $250 an hour, $200 an hour. He charges Google and all these other companies $500 an hour because they go outsource to foreign countries and pay 1/5 the amount of money. And they come back and they're like, I have a heaping pile of crap here. Here's $7 million. Go fix it, right? He said that, and at the talk I went to with him, he said that he knows about 10 to 15 CEOs he told, don't do this. And now they're all fired, right? So when you know what you're doing, you can make lots of money in this industry. So he charges, I think personally, $500 an hour. That's $1 million a year. Plus he makes all the money off of other people, right?
Let me suggest something. Have them hire a good offshore tech lead. That's all they need.
Offshore tech lead?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one. So you want to network, if you're going to do some offshore, yeah.
I have seen wonderful applications developed in that framework, and I have seen wonderful people creating crap right here in the one room, in one conference room, sitting right next to each other. Millions of dollars basically.
It depends case by case.
No, you make a good point. It's not like if you go outsource it's gonna, if you don't outsource it's gonna be crap.
That's what you said. So like, in my view, is every approach has a methodology. If you follow right methodology, you're gonna get the results. So you cannot develop a team sitting in offshore with the pure agile, like ultra same model. But there is a different methodology, and I have seen excellent applications being developed that way.
Yeah.
Excellent. Like
I don't disagree with you at all. And so if you're gonna go outsource,
You as a buyer, if you have the right wisdom, and some people surrounded with right wisdom, right? You can make decisions very well, even if your team is distributed globally, right? The problem comes when you don't know what you want to do.
right?
That's really the problem.
Or the things you don't know that you should know,
Yeah, so the more the knowledgeable buyer is, you can make the magic happen.
right?
And the other thing I've seen a lot, I use overseas teams. I'll be on the phone at 11 o'clock tonight with teams overseas. I use overseas developers a lot, but the key, if you're asking this question because you're considering using other outsource resources, is continuous communication. So a lot of my clients that I end up helping, have outsourced something, but they've outsourced it by saying, well, we found an offshore developer, we told them what we wanted, and then 6 months later, we called them.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
That's exactly
That's
right.
not the way
It's
it
not gonna
works.
work. And that's not gonna work with people here either, right? If I go across the street and get a developer and say, hey, we'll meet 6 months from now and you built me a perfect app, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So that's like when you're outsourcing, finding good people, and good people are all over, but the communication.
Yeah, I would say like, I mean, before you outsource, educate yourself on how application should be done. What is the role of product owner? Because at the end of the day, you are product owner. What is the role of product owner? If you don't understand that, just forget it. Just save yourself some pain, save your developers some pain.
Yeah. And go network with people that worked with people here overseas, and go find people that have had good experiences. You'll save yourself pain.
Great people because of open source, internationally, than I have found anywhere, even sometimes in Silicon Valley. So I think that's a block, right? I mean, depending on what business you have and what business plan you have, you're going to hit different levels of resource dependencies. Some dependencies you need locally. You can't have a salesperson sitting in offshore to market, the top executives in the US, right? So it all depends what the ballgame is. If you're building if your intellectual property has to be locally validated and secured there, of course you got to have the talent here, right? So it all depends on the phase in which where you are for engaging the right set of people to get things done. So it's no more, I would say, one solution at least. Don't just go for offshore because you want to save money, and you're going to get what you pay for. But you should be also really willing to pay for what you know that you want.
Yep. Great advice. Thanks.
Okay.
I think we're good.
We're good. So, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
So, before everybody packs up, there's a couple more things. First of all, we'd like to thank you with a certificate. And maybe more importantly, a Starbucks card.
Oh, awesome. I'm official.
Yes, thank you so much. And now we need
Cool.
a picture for this for your mom as well as for...
I need this for my mom.
Can you take our picture?